Well, I mean, they made the playoffs last year, so that puts them in the top 14 before the offseason even got started. You look at the moves they've made. I mean, clearly, everyone, including Peter, has acknowledged that they had one of the better off seasons. So, I would say 9 or 10 is pretty fair. Um, there's a beyond beyond Tampa, the Rams, and Green Bay. I think I think it's clearly those are the three best teams in the NFC. After that, I think you could put them right there with San Francisco, with the Cowboys. So I think nine's fair.
I only wish I had some stateside vodka in my coffee cup this morning. Mac and Mac guys, sober as judges.
Jolt, Jody. Stateside jolt.
No, I stick to caffeine. May hit the stateside later. We hit our guest line. Joining us right now from the 33rd team and JAKIBSports.com, our new website here with JAKIB Media, is Paul Domowitch. Domo, good to catch up with you, my friend. Always good to get your opinions on everything. Are you going to get a bigger byline than McMullen? That's all I need to know. Who's going to have the big name print on the web?
On Damo's stat package is legendary for the preview of games. So I'm going to say that's Damo by a country mile.
You're being modest, John.
All right.
I'm happy to be here with my two favorite Macs behind the Big Mac.
Yeah, we appreciate that as well, Damo. So I think it's a good time to have you on this morning because our buddy Bo Wolf broke the news that Julian Laurie is coming into the organization in a official capacity. We all know it was going to happen, but you've been around Jeffrey Lurie since day one. 70 years old, can't last forever. This is obviously the heir apparent who's going to be running this team at some point. Now that he's in the day-to-day operations of the building, though, even though it's not immediate, do you think that changes the power structure at all? Because family's family. So, Howie's been closest to Jeffrey. I think that changes.
Well, I mean, it's someone that is going to have Jeffrey's ear, obviously, but I think Jeffrey also knows that his son has a lot to learn. I mean, look at the Cowboys with Jerry Jones. I mean, his sons have been with him forever with high titles, and yet there's only one leader there, and that's Jerry. I think Jeffrey envisions the day when his son will take over for him, but I don't see Jeffrey stepping down anytime soon, and I don't see him. I mean, the only thing to watch out for is whether his son might not be as excited about Howie down the road as he is, where that might affect things. But right now, that's not the case. So I don't see it changing anything right now.
Here's the only question I would have, because I agree with everything you just said, Damo. If Bo has the exact reporting correct, and an official title means actual influence from the day he gets that title, that's one thing. But it's going to take a while, as you and I both think, for Jeffrey to see the true power base of the Eagles. How about just the people working in the organization? You've got the boss, and now you got the boss's son. So that's just one other individual who's looking over your shoulder, making sure you're doing your title right. Does it have any influence on the organization in general? They're putting the new power structure together. A lot of front office personnel left. They've hired some new ones, at least being reported. Some will get promotions and the like. Does it bring an extra added layer of pressure to the organization, no matter what position you're in, to perform? Because now you've got a boss and you got a boss emeritus. At some point, you're going to report to him too, if you're planning on keeping your job for the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah. To a certain degree, I guess. I don't know a lot about the son. I think if I'm not wrong, correct me, John, but he's another one of these analytics types.
Yes, that's my concern, Damo, because Alan Calby's going to get a promotion. That's what I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, because that's been, that's a sore spot with, that's one of the reasons Doug Peterson's not here anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he did not much care for the whole analytics thing. He resented the analytics people that were feeding him information for no good reason other than the numbers said something. So yeah, that's something to watch out for. But I don't, I got to believe while it probably is going to help the standing of some of the analytics people in the organization. I don't think he's going to overstep his bounds, at least in the near future.
Go ahead, John.
No, go ahead, Jody.
I wanted to take it back onto the field, if that's okay with you, Damo.
Sure.
It's been a couple of weeks since we had you on, I think, since Peter King came out with his power rankings of the Eagles at 9th in the overall National Football League and 4th in the NFC. I know power rankings really mean nothing other than an educated opinion, and there's no more educated opinion than Peter King, but it is just that. It's kind of like a beauty contest. But pressure comes with it. I guess I'm a pressure guy today, worried about pressure. Do the Eagles deserve, have they earned, they merited a status as high as not only top 10, top 9 in the National Football League as of their roster with all the changes they made this offseason now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they made the playoffs last year, so that puts them in the top 14 before the offseason even got started. You look at the moves they've made. I mean, clearly everyone, including Peter, has acknowledged that they had one of the better off seasons. So, I would say 9 or 10 is pretty fair. There's a beyond Tampa, the Rams, and Green Bay. I think there's, I think it's clearly those are the 3 best teams in the NFC. After that, I think you could put them right there with San Francisco, with the Cowboys. So I think 9's fair.
The San Francisco team is interesting to me, and I brought this up because they're so similar, at least from how they're being built. If you look at Peter's top 8 teams, and I don't have it in front of me, but I do remember the top 8 teams all had star quarterbacks, legit star quarterbacks. And then the drop off was the Eagles at 9 and the 49ers were at 10. And they don't have, but Jimmy Garoppolo is the one who has proven, he's gotten to the Final Four twice. He's gotten to the Super Bowl once. I look at that 49ers team, the way they built their team, very similar to what the Eagles are trying to do. You have Trent Williams at left tackle, as a Hall of Fame guy. That's a first ballot Hall of Fame guy. George Kittle at tight end. I love Dallas Goedert. He's not George Kittle. A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, you can kind of – they're similar, different players, but similar as far as talent, production, things like that. The 49ers have the great running game. Nick Bosa, hey, I love Hassan Reddick, but he ain't Nick Bosa. So, the Eagles are sort of they want to become what the 49ers have been. Then we talk about the coach. I should mention the coach. Kyle's got a little bit more on the resume than Nick Sirianni. Are people skipping steps with this Eagles team a little bit because they're enamored, they're a little tipsy on the offseason moves?
Well, I think much like San Francisco, John, it's all going to come down to the quarterback. If Trey Lance is what the 49ers hope, they're going to have a damn good team. And, we're going to see what Jalen Hurts' ceiling is. If it's as high, as they're hoping it is, this is a team that can quickly become a Super Bowl contender. If he doesn't make much progress over last year, this is just another team that's going to fight for a playoff spot, and they're going to be looking for a quarterback next year. So, that to me is the key. They're going to be better defensively, much better, I think. Their offensive line is one of the best in the league. Adding A.J. Brown has given them one more playmaker for Jalen to throw to. But it all comes down to Jalen. If he can't get the job done, it's just a pretty good team. If Jalen can be what they hope he can be. If he makes improvement in this, in the same system again for the first time in I don't know how many years since he's been in the same system 2 years in a row, then this could be a special team, I think.
I think it's high school since he's
Yeah.
had the same system. Yeah.
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 And he's put in I don't know if he can, I liked him when they drafted him. I believed I believe he can be a franchise quarterback in this league, but I don't know. And I don't think Howie still knows, which is why we're at the point we're at. But, I'll give the kid credit. He's worked his tail off.
Oh, yeah.
Off season, he goes and go out to California. He's been out there until he came back to work with the team where he's been working with a quarterbacks coach. He's there's nothing he's not doing to try to get better. The question is, what's that level going to be?
Domo, both you and John may get an email at some point today, an invitation to come down and actually get some grass time tomorrow and watch the Eagles in their major workouts. Now, you've been covering this team long enough that you understand the term two-a-days, which meant something back in the 80s. Two-a-days now means hours per necessary, and they don't even fill out those 2 hours. They get out of there before 2 hours, not 2 workouts, morning and afternoon. So things have changed drastically in the National Football League over the time that you've been following them. But the Eagles even more so, maybe than any other team in the National Football League, believe less is more. That because they weren't nearly as injured last year as they had been in the 2 previous years, they're putting their eggs in the basket of, if we can't practice, we can't get hurt. And they think that that's going to work going forward for them. It is a very tricky road to walk down and a balance to try and strike. Eagles doing this right? Is it better to preserve yourself and err on the side of caution to stay healthy rather than put in extra hours and hours and hours to get ready for an upcoming season?
More and more teams are taking that approach. They just want to get to the starting line in one piece. The physicality that I'm good with that. You don't need to hit in the spring, but I don't know how much like classroom work they're doing. If they're comfortable with the level of everybody picking up the system, especially the young guys, if they feel they're getting enough reps in these 6 OTAs and don't need the mandatory camp. I thought they cut it a little bit too much. I don't think this was totally necessary. I would have gone with the 10 OTAs. Just you don't have to hit. You don't have to have 11 on 11s, but get them out in the field doing reps. Now, again, I don't know what they're doing in between. They obviously feel comfortable that they're doing enough that when they get to the starting line, everybody's going to know what they're supposed to do. I like this, what they're doing, and I don't like it because I like it from the standpoint that they probably will be healthy when they get to week 1. The question is, are they going to be ready mentally week 1 with especially a lot of these young guys? I have no doubt Jalen is going to be ready. He's, like we talked about, second year in this same system for the first time. There are going to be no problems there, but you're trying to integrate AJ Brown, other guys. Those are questions where I think a couple of extra OTAs might have helped, but I don't think it's a big negative. I don't think it's a big positive.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that one as well, Damo, because I'm like, on one hand, and I always say it, and you'll probably agree, and anyone who's been around the NFL for a long time knows we've all yet to meet the coach that doesn't want to practice. They want to prepare. But you do have these restrictions from the CBA, and they keep getting scaled back and scaled back and scaled back. So I kind of hit that point where I'm like, well, you can't prepare like you want to prepare anyway. So
Exactly.
You might as well get to week 1 as healthy as possible. So I kind of lean on the Eagles side of it. And then the scale back of team drills, as you mentioned, there's no team drills for the Eagles in OTAs. They're going strictly 7-on-7s.
Okay.
And I say to myself, well, I guess you can argue run fits and making sure people are hitting their landmarks, but other than that, offensive and defensive linemen, when you don't have pads on, they're like cosplaying for effect. They're like stand-ins in a Hollywood movie. I mean, why make them stand out there? So I kind of understand the Eagles' perspective. So I want to ask you from a league-wide standpoint, do they just not care about preparation because they know people aren't going to turn off the TV no matter what the product looks like?
This is union driven, as you guys know. I mean, and the league was willing to give them this, a lot. I think, and also COVID kind of played into this. They didn't get a chance to practice at all during COVID, and the league and the league still was as popular as ever. The games were as popular as ever. The ratings. So I mean, the union grabbed onto that and said, we don't need to be out there. And the league, doesn't care. I mean, the owners only care about the bottom line and the ratings and all that stuff. And so they were willing to make concessions to the union with respect to off-season work in exchange for other things, for the 17-game season, for eventually the 18-game season, extra playoff games. All this stuff that the union once said, never, we will never do this. It's, our players, it's suicide. Well, then suddenly, they realized it back then, but players are making more money now because the cap number's gone way up with all of this. And so they're willing, in exchange, they said, well, at least, we don't want to work during the off season, and we don't want to have to report till May or April or whatever it is. We, limit the OTAs, and that's what they've done. And there are coaches that have howled. I mean, before John Gruden's was drummed out of the league, he constantly was talking about how big a negative this was, limiting off-season work, especially when you have a young quarterback. But basically, it wasn't important enough for them to hold firm on it.
Damo, even though the Eagles will have limited quote unquote team, which means for me 11-11 action here in preseason, they do have at least one, if not a couple different places where they need to determine who's actually going to be their starter, who's going to be the guy who's going to man the most snaps at that position. One that kind of sticks out is right guard. I asked Zach Berman yesterday a percentage question in this area. I want to ask you the same, not question, but a percentage question as well. Isaac Seumalo, one of three things is going to happen. Either he's going to be the Eagles' starting right guard, either he's going to be a backup to a guy like Jack Driscoll or a situational substitution guy, which we know on the offensive line means basically not playing because they don't shuttle guys in and out like they do on the defensive line, or he could be traded. That the Eagles could take the depth that they have at offensive line and say, hey, we could move Isaac and get something that could fortify a different position for us. Those three possibilities, 100% break down the way you see it. Isaac starting, Isaac backing up, Isaac out of town.
And they have to add up to 100%?
Correct.
That's the tough part, Tom.
Let's see. Isaac starting, I'm going to put it 60%, 65%.
All right.
Isaac being traded, 25%, and that leaves 10% backup. I just, they're going to probably Dillard or Isaac, one of them is going to be gone. You can't keep all these veteran starters, veteran or guys that can start. Dillard seems the guy you would continue to hang on to until, you hope somebody gets hurt for another team in late August and is desperate for a left tackle. Isaac, I like Jack Driscoll. I think if Isaac's healthy, he's I want him as my starting guard. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and to me, it kind of looks like, do you really think you're a contender? If you're a top 10 team, I'm going with Isaac Seumalo. I kind of know, though, the plan is Jack to be the starter in 2023. So, on the other hand, you might say, well, let's get this thing started anyway. Let's continue to develop Jack Driscoll, maybe spin off Isaac Seumalo if you can for a safety, Chuck Clark, are you listening, Baltimore? You know, a lot of different ways how we can go with it. But I do think Isaac is valuable at the bare minimum. We talk about the Eagles' depth, and they have unbelievable depth on the offensive line compared to other teams in the NFL. But if you start losing Andre Dillard and Isaac Seumalo, well, there's a big difference between those guys and LaRaven Clark and Suo Peta. So it drops off pretty quickly. It's kind of a tightrope when you talk about depth on the offensive line. And nobody knows about losing offensive linemen more than the Eagles over the past couple of years. So it's important to have those guys.
Absolutely, and you know, like you said, they've experienced what it's like to not have enough depth, so that they don't want to be caught short here, which is why I think they'll go on the side of caution here, and not, unless there's an offer made, like you mentioned, getting a safety that could really help them defensively. You know, maybe you do that deal. Otherwise, I think you stand pat and you know, and have these guys in case somebody gets hurt. You know,
which is probably going to happen at some point.
Oh yeah,
it has happened in years past. And Lane's not getting younger. Jason obviously at his age, and they've added Cam Jurgens as well. But people forget, you know, Jordan Mailata at his size, he's had some back injuries in the past. He's had some, you know, issues with that, and you know, the assumption that he's going to be there. The assumption that anybody's going to be there for 17 games, as you mentioned, we talk about with the increase and what it does to the body, is kind of you have to start thinking about depth a little bit more than even in the past. I would say.
Yeah, and with 17 games, also, I mean, you're going to see more and more teams kind of figure out a way to rotate. To control the number of snaps guys are taking, so that you don't get to week 18 and a guy's, you know, got nothing left in the tank for the playoffs. So, you know, I mean, even if guys don't get hurt, you might want to consider occasionally rotating guys in.
All right, Damo, need another prediction out of you. Which of your Eagle brethren, McMullen included, will be the one to write the article about A.J. Brown takes Devontae Smith under his wing? The mentor-protege relationship, which I think is always overstated. Oh, remember how Tyrese Maxey was like a puppy dog following around James Harden his first week here in town? How'd that work out? Anyway, you got the veteran wide receiver, veteran of all of 3 years, as compared to the second year guy in Devontae Smith. Is that you've been covering teams long enough, Damo? How often is that actually the case, that a guy really learns from a teammate who comes in from out of town, new guy, new face, has more of a resume? Is that a legit thing?
You know, if Devontae came from Liberty University and hadn't played 4 years at Alabama, you know, I could see where, you know, having an elder statesman to kind of guide him would help. You know, he doesn't need any help. Devontae is starting with his training. I mean, I forget who wrote a story during the offseason on just what he went, you know, what his training regimen. And so I think there'll be chemistry between them. I think they'll work well together. But I don't think A.J. Brown is going to have any impact on Devontae as far as guiding him into the next level.
Yeah, it was Josh. I'll give Josh Tolentino credit. He got that old Inquirer budget, Tomo. You know that. They sent him down there, so that was good. He got and Devontae, I got to tell you, he's the weird, because he's 166 pounds soaking wet. We talk about it ad nauseum coming out of the draft, but he's really strong. He's got these massive hands. He's just a weird makeup that you don't expect, and he's really strong. So I'll go this direction with you when it comes to the receivers, not the mentor-mentee relationship, but getting the football. Now we start to talk about, you know, embarrassment of riches. We talked about this team can't find a receiver. Now you got to get the ball to AJ Brown. You got to get the ball to Devontae Smith. You got to get the ball to Dallas Goedert. I'm not even worried about the Quaz Watkins of the world because you can't be worried about it. Is everybody going to be happy now that there's so many potential difference makers on the offensive side of the football?
That's always a delicate balance, John. And right now we don't know, how much 11 personnel they're going to play as opposed to 12 personnel. You got a guy like Miles Sanders who's getting close to hoping to get another contract, which I'm skeptical he's going to get here, but he needs touches. He needs both in the passing game and the run game. Is he going to get them? Is he going to be happy if he doesn't? I think AJ Brown will be fine. I think the receivers will be okay, and Goddard's already got his new deal, so
that's true. Money will make you happy.
Yeah, now is not the time to cry. So
then AJ Brown should be the happiest of all.
Yes,
and I think the thing is they love Jalen Hurts so much. I mean, the one thing this kid is a great leader, and his receivers aren't going to whine and complain about him not getting them the ball. I mean, at least not publicly. They might try to campaign and lobby with him on the side, but I think I don't think that's going to be a major issue. I'm just curious to see how this offense is going to run. I mean, they're not going to run the ball as much as they did last year, but they're still going to, there's going to be some sort of balance. And there's, we're going to find out how Nick is going to do that, but we won't know that until week 1.
By the way, I'm predicting Devontae Smith listed at least 175 when the Eagles come out with the official measurements I pounded. I'm guaranteeing you they bump him up a couple of pounds this year, and he will have put on at least some muscle during the offseason. Just a prediction from yours truly. You mentioned Miles Sanders. Our buddy Jeff Knox from Inside the Eagles had a spot on his website the other day about what a Miles Sanders contract could look like. Tapped into a sport track expert to project exactly what kind of deal he could qualify for, and he said 3 years, $12 million, which is only 4 and change a year. Not outrageous, but you're making a commitment going forward. If he were to sign and I think he said at that dollar, he'd be the 19th highest paid back in the NFL, which is not outrageous by any stretch of the imagination. If something like that were in the offing, would the Eagles do something like that, Damo?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you're right. The money wouldn't be awful, but they got to ask themselves: do they want, going forward? Do they want 2 backs that are so similar as him and Gainwell? And Gainwell's more of an accomplished receiver than Sanders is. So, I mean, if Miles, the thing that frustrates me about Miles, even this far into his career, is he still won't take the ball inside. I mean, it's not his, unless he has no choice, and he has to, and I don't know that he's ever going to learn that. And I don't think he's a natural receiver. He can catch the ball, but he's not like Gainwell. Where you can line up anywhere on the field. He can run wide receiver routes. No matter what the contract is, I can't see Sanders taking that deal, a deal like that. I think he'd want more, thinks he can get more somewhere else. So, I just don't think he's going to be here for a second contract.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for Miles coming in on that contract year. And I think Nick Sirianni loves the committee approach as well. So that's part of it. He's going to get Kenny Gainwell involved, and who knows? We'll see if Boston Scott and anyone else, and we'll give Kennedy Brooks a shout out, Oklahoma kid. Could potentially make this team in the Jordan Howard spot. So we'll see. And now that we have the 16-man practice squad, Damo, they're going to keep that. Maybe Jordan Howard will get the phone call now, and they'll stash him on the practice squad because nobody else ever calls Jordan. So who knows?
Exactly.
I'll end it here with you. I want to go to the 33rd team, so everyone can read Damo there, and he's going to be on JAKIB Sports. .com as well as we get closer to the season. Mike Tannenbaum, who former GM in this league, is doing a group of tier articles that I've liked over at the 33rd team, and he did the quarterbacks, and he had 7 different tiers sort of amongst the starters or people that could potentially be starters, and he had Jalen Hurts way down in tier 6. And tier 6 are players that you can win with if the situation around them is ideal. A little bit too harsh, or is that where Jalen Hurts should be until he proves otherwise?
Yeah, I might have moved him up 1 tier. But I think Mike's in the Chris Sims category. Not big on Jalen. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that don't think his arm's strong enough. Don't think his decision making ever will be good enough to be an elite quarterback. I think he does have to prove himself, but right now I might have put him up 1 more tier than Mike did.
All right, so then let me finish with you in trying to evaluate Jalen even further. If Chris Sims has him 25th, and oh, by the way, has Carson Wentz 19th, the latest grouping of Sims's list came out today, and we knew Carson was on there somewhere. He's at 19. Jalen was at 25. And yeah, he put all those second-year quarterbacks just ahead of him, Wilson and Fields, and I forget who the third one was.
Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence, right. And Mac Jones is up there with Carson Wentz in the teens. And Tannenbaum had him down on tier number 7. What statistic? We can all judge by our eyes, and 3 relatively well-spoken football guys been watching for a long time. I think we can say, listen, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks. Here's what we see. Here's what we know. People want numbers. People want to have a statistic they can grab onto in the analytical world in which we live. You got to give me something behind just I know what I see. What statistic, what category do you think Jalen Hurts really needs to take? Not just a step up, but a major step up to get guys who are going to do these rankings next year to be able to hang their hat on and go, yeah, I got to make Jalen Hurts a top half of the NFL rankings type player because he did this last year. What's the category that you think can move the needle most in people's evaluations of Jalen?
Well, Jody, I think there's 2 that I use a lot when I'm trying to gauge the quality of a quarterback, and that's third down passing and red zone passing. You look at the great quarterbacks; both of them excel in those areas because they have to. I mean, that's how you move the football. That's how you score points. Jalen has struggled in those areas. Last year, his numbers weren't very good. Some of it was circumstantial, them running the ball so much and him running the ball so much. I mean, he only had 4 red zone touchdown passes in the last 8 games. I mean, that's a horrible number. But again, there were some circumstances. He also had 10 rushing touchdowns. I mean, a lot of times when they were in the red zone, he was running it rather than throwing it. But those numbers have to improve. I mean, he has to be a bit, somebody on what he's got to find a receiver, whether it's Goddard, whether it's A.J. Brown, somebody that becomes his guy in the red zone like Wentz when he was playing well had with Zach Ertz. And then on third down, he needs to excel. I mean, they need to stay out of 3rd and long, but when he gets in a 3rd and 5, he needs to be like along the lines of a Brady where that's kind of automatic. You're going to get that first down because you're going to find somebody open, and unless they drop it, it's going to be a first down. So those are 2 categories I look at, Jody.
Yeah, I like both of them. They are keys that we can keep our eye on, and we'll see if the tight end, you mentioned Brady, that Gronk guy. Wonder if he's going to go back and play again this year. Still not signed with the Buccaneers. If Goddard becomes that guy for Hurts, should be very interesting. Damo, looking forward to you joining the team at JAKIBSports.com. We'll continue reading on the 33rd team as well, and we'll be punching you right back up here on Birds 365 in a couple of weeks. Thanks for jumping on today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.